Hi, I'm Eric Bowling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Let's get right to our top story. New revelations in the Hillary Clinton email scandal. About 300 pages of emails released Tuesday are raising questions about quid pro quo relationships between Clinton Foundation staffers and Hillary Clinton's State Department. Joining us now with reaction from Washington, Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch, the group which uncovered these new emails. Doug, I mean, we've heard about these emails for most of the day, but again, Doug Band, a top Clinton Foundation official, asking the State Department for access to a Lebanese man, presumably to do business with him, and then this man, Doug Band, says there's a lot of money involved. There's $1 million, somewhere between $1 million and $5 million involved that the Clinton Foundation is going to receive, right?
Yeah, Shigori, the name of the man is Mr. Shigori, and he's a billionaire. He gave between $1 million and $5 million to the Clinton Foundation. Committed to a $1 billion program associated with the Clinton Global Initiative, which is also part of the foundation. And so the Clinton Foundation's top operative, Doug Band, communicates with Clinton's top aides at the State Department saying he wants to talk to someone, your top guy, about Lebanon. And, you know, he says he's important to us, which translates to most normal people as he's important to us because he's a big donor to us. And so people have raised the issue is why is it that Mrs. Clinton, who promised to stay out of Clinton Foundation business, almost immediately the Clinton Foundation and her top aides are trying to take care of a Clinton donor?
Now, if you read some of these emails, it sounds like this Doug Band is telling whom Abedin in this instance who's working at the time at this moment for Hillary Clinton, telling her what he wants her to do, and she's responding saying, yes, I'll do that, I'll get that done. That is the very definition of quid pro quo, especially if you tie in that money, the $1 to $5 million.
Exactly, and Abedin and Cheryl Mills, who was also involved in this process, had been closely associated with the Clinton Foundation. In fact, Abedin later went to work for the foundation while working for the State Department at the same time. So this is working hand in glove, and Mrs. Clinton promised, in order to get it confirmed as the Secretary of State, to keep the Clinton Foundation out of State Department business, and those rules and that promise and that ethics agreement was violated almost immediately.
Can you, Tom, can you lock down these timelines? So there people are pushing back saying, hey, maybe the time didn't line up right, but these things happened from January of 2009 when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, during her 4-year term, right?
Yeah, this is all during her term as State Department. She was at the State Department. Doug Band talked to her former colleagues at the State Department from the Clinton Foundation, now at the State Department, to get this favor done for Mr. Shigori. There's also another email where the subject line says, a favor. Someone was seeking a job at the State Department. Band wanted some follow-up on that, and he was told there was follow-up. We don't know if it was a donor or just an associate or a friend, but once again, if you knew the Clinton Foundation, had a friend at the Clinton Foundation, or were a big donor to Clinton Foundation, you got a favor done, which was special access to the upper reaches of Hillary Clinton's State Department. All
right, one more question. Who agreed, who thought would be a good idea, and who agreed, who signed off on whom Abedin being able to work for not only the State Department, but simultaneously work for the Clinton Foundation? I mean, I don't know if it's a conflict or corruption, but someone had to sign off on that, right?
Yeah, later we found the document. We thought initially it was signed by Hillary Clinton because her name is on the form, but Cheryl Mills, her chief of staff, signed it for her. So, again, approved at the upper reaches of the State Department.
Wow. I mean,
Mills, by the way, later went.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mills, by the way, later went to work for the Clinton Foundation and is now with the foundation.
Honestly, the incestual relationships between these two, there's more to come, I'm guessing. Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joining us with more on the legal implications of all this, Fox senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, you're listening to this. We're shaking our heads, going, how much? This is almost textbook. Quid pro quo.
Right. If it weren't so tragic, it would almost be laughable that the right hand permits the left hand to engage in this. What we have here, not only from Tom's work, and by the way, he's a single-handed, dedicated person who exposed all this by filing these Freedom of Information Act lawsuits. What we see here is a regular, consistent pattern of foreign governments, foreign entities, and foreign persons coming to the Clinton State Department and asking for favors. Favors she is lawfully allowed to give. An exemption from this rule, permission to do that, the opportunity to purchase this. And then after the favor is issued, formally using the formal power that the federal law gives to the Secretary of State, huge contributions are made to the Clinton Foundation, and in some cases, huge speaking fees to Bill Clinton himself. By huge, $750,000, $500,000 to former President Bill Clinton, the husband of the Secretary of State, for a 35-minute speech.
Let me tie that up even further. These things happened after 2009.
Right.
Bill Clinton has not been president for 9 years at that point.
Right.
Yet his speaking fee went from $100,000 to $200,000 up to $500,000 and above 9 years after he left. But it happens to coincide with Hillary Clinton's time, 11 of the 13,
of course,
during her time as State
Department. Because he's not only producing a speech, he's producing some exemption from American federal regulation or some opportunity in America for these people that are hosting the speech that only his wife can give. Eric, in my view, this is an easier case for the FBI to prove than the email case was. It's easier for the public to understand. It's easier for a jury to understand.
It's circumstantial at this point, Judge, though. I mean, you and I have this idea that, yes, his fee went up double and triple during her time, but is there a smoking gun?
If the DOJ were serious about this, they would indict some of the people who got these favors, and those people would spill the beans on what their negotiations were with Bill and his people and what their negotiations were with Hillary and her people. This is a very, very serious allegation of public corruption. On top of that, the more of these emails that come out, the more of these emails that she swore under oath 3 times that she surrendered, the more opportunity there is for a future Justice Department to prosecute her for perjury. We know of at least 3 so far. 3 swearings under oath, everything was surrendered. Every day, more things show up that she never surrendered.
All right, Judge, you said something that's jogged my memory. You said the DOJ should open up an investigation. They should indict some of these people. Now, we just went through the DOJ saying they weren't going to indict Hillary because the FBI said the recommendation was not to. Is this going to be another James Comey, yeah, we did an investigation, we'll turn it over to you, DOJ, and Loretta Lynch saying, we're not going to indict?
I'm sorry to say that I fear that. 2 months ago, I did not fear it, because Jim Comey 2 months ago had that stellar, superb, lifelong reputation as a straight shooter, and I'm sorry to tell you, there he is on the screen. I'm sorry to tell you, Eric, this is not new, and I'm not the only one saying this, he no longer has that reputation.
Why is there are a lot of good FBI agents working on these cases,
There are
right?
great FBI agents. These are the people in the field. They are very unhappy with the decisions of the Justice Department, their bosses, or of Director Comey, their ultimate boss, not to bring this information to a grand jury.
And so he takes the information, says, did a lot of work. I probably have enough here to recommend an indictment by the DOJ, and chooses somehow not to. What's the motivation there?
To elect Hillary Clinton president, not on Jim Comey's part, but on the part of the higher ups in the DOJ. Look, this meeting with Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch at the Phoenix airport.
Why Comey, though?
This
what
was
happened
not
to Jim Comey?
This was not an accident.
Everyone loved James Comey.
Correct.
Everyone said he's, like you just said, he's an honest, straightforward, great lawmaker. He's the top cop in the FBI. What happened? What's going on?
I am as frustrated with you as you, not with you, forgive me. I'm as frustrated as you are, Eric, trying to figure out what happened, and I don't know. We may not know until the history of these times is written.
No, Judge, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next on the rundown, quite a different view of the new Hillary Clinton email revelations. We'll be back in a moment. Continuing now with our top story, new details in the Hillary Clinton email scandal. Peter Schweitzer, the author of Clinton Cash, which exposed a lot of questionable dealings around the Clinton Foundation, recently claimed an FBI investigation into the foundation is already underway.
I can't go into detail, but I can tell you on personal experience that I know the FBI is investigating the Clinton Foundation.
They're doing it now. They're doing it today. Have they questioned you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'd rather not talk about that, but they are doing it at present.
Joining us now with reaction from Washington, former State Department official David Tafuri. David, if you did this in the business world, what we understand has been done with the Clinton Foundation, you go to jail.
Well, I don't know about that. You have to mention specifically what you're talking about.
Here's what I'm talking about.
Here's
what I'm talking about.
Related to
dropping money into a group so that you have access to someone else so you can do a business deal, ingratiate yourself, and make money off that business deal. Add in that the State Department is the broker of this. This is, I mean, look, I'm not at the DOJ, but I got to say I want to know a lot more about what goes on with the Clinton Foundation.
Well, let's talk about these two new emails. You have to ask two questions. One, is there anything new in these emails? And two, is there anything wrong, either unethical or illegal about these two emails? The answer to both questions is no. These emails show almost nothing that is new. These are the types of things that we already knew were happening. These are the types of things that Comey and the FBI have already looked at and investigated and concluded there's no problem here. There's nothing illegal about them here.
So you're saying there's nothing illegal about putting money in a politician's pocket to gain access to a foreign government or foreign corporation that they have business dealings, U.S. business dealings with. That's entirely okay.
Here. Let's be precise here. Money did not go into a politician's pocket.
Thank you for saying that.
Money went into a
Thank you for saying that.
A charitable
That's the important distinction here,
that does
right?
charitable activities.
Is it? Because you can make a link between the Clinton Foundation and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton becoming very, very wealthy.
Well, make that link, because nobody has been able to make that link. This is a charitable organization that does charitable activities.
Here's the link.
That's number one. That's important.
Here's the link.
But there's another thing that's very important.
A lot of their travel, a lot of their expenses, a lot of their housing expenses are paid for in the Clinton Foundation. It's like saying, I'm going to put money in this pocket, but I'm going to take money out of this pocket. Therefore, I didn't spend as much money because I still have the money in this other pocket. Wrong. You're still spending the money, the pool of money.
Look, the IRS forms for this charitable organization are public. People have combed through them. You can look at the expenses. Nobody has come up with any specific expenses that show that the Clintons got reimbursed for travel or anything else that wasn't related to charitable activities. We need to be precise when we talk about this rather than just throw out allegations without precise evidence. And again, the FBI has looked at all of this. Let's trust the FBI and its director, who is above any scrutiny, and trust their conclusions about this.
Okay, I'll give you another one. Ready for this one? During the time that Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, her husband, Bill Clinton, 9 years removed from office, all of a sudden doubles and triples his speaking fee. Now, what would cause that?
I mean, President Bill Clinton is probably one of the most sought-after speakers in the country and in the world. You may not like that.
No. I'm not disputing that.
You may not want to attend one of those speaking engagements and listen to him, but there are people who are willing to pay him to speak. I actually find him very engaging. I've been to a couple of them, and I find him extremely engaging. But you know what? When he left the White House and he was shrouded in some of the scandal with the Lewinsky situation, I would think he'd be more sought after in 2000 than 2009 when he's 9 years removed from office. I mean, you're asking me to, talk about a market that I don't know very well, which is a speaking market. I find you very engaging. I would go to an event where you got paid to be a speaker.
If all of a sudden my fee went up by triple, I would say, and it kind of coincided with these emails showing that there was some access provided by my wife, I would say maybe there is some sort of, monetary benefit by myself from her State Department job.
Well, now again, you're throwing out allegations without precise evidence to support them. Right. You have to look at what evidence we have. Now look at these two new emails, because the previous guest suggested there's a quid pro quo. This is the worst quid pro quo I've ever heard of. In one case, the quid pro quo is meeting with an ambassador to Lebanon, which is what the ambassador does. He does meetings.
Thank you. I got to go. Next up, Donald Trump responds to the backlash over his Second Amendment comments. How big of a deal is the controversy for his campaign? That debate, moments away. In the Impact segment tonight, the left not letting up on Donald Trump's Second Amendment comments. Liberal outrage is at a fever pitch following his remarks yesterday.
Hillary wants to essentially abolish the Second Amendment. By the way, and if she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know.
Trump has made it clear he was talking about political action, not violence. Mrs. Clinton isn't buying that explanation and said so today.
Yesterday, we witnessed the latest in a long line of casual comments from Donald Trump that cross the line. And now his casual inciting of violence. Every single one of these incidents shows us that Donald Trump simply does not have the temperament to be President and Commander-in-Chief of the United States. So the stakes have never been higher.
But Hillary Clinton supporters ought to flash back to 2008, the presidential campaign, when Clinton herself was accused of hinting at violence directed at her primary opponent, then Senator Barack Obama.
You know, my husband did not wrap up the nomination in 1992 until he won the California primary somewhere in the middle of June, right? We all remember Bobby Kennedy was assassinated in June in California.
Joining us now with reaction from Dallas, Trump campaign spokesperson Katrina Pearson, and from Washington, Republican strategist Ashley Pratt. Now, Ashley, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. I know you're not a Hillary person, but you're an anti-Trump person.
That's right.
But I listened to Hillary Clinton, and I heard in 2008. Remember, she was up against Barack Obama, and she was losing. This was May, and she was losing. And the question was, should she drop out in the interest of unity, party unity? And she said, "I'm not dropping out." Basically, I'm paraphrasing. I'm not dropping out because anything can happen. And then she cited, a month later, in years back, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated in the month of June while they were in the month of May. So there was still time for something like that to happen. Please tell me, how is that any different than what Donald Trump said the other day on the Second Amendment?
Well, it's a lot different, and I'm not going to defend something that she said, as well as I'm not going to defend what he said last night. Look, Eric, a president's words are incredibly important. They can start wars. They're important for global, attitudes towards us. And at the same time, Donald Trump is the nominee for President of the United States. So when his language is as loose as it is indefensible, as well as, quite frankly, pretty dangerous. And I think, based off of what he said last night, his comments prove one of two things: either that he's exceedingly reckless or that he's exceedingly unaware of the impact that his words do have on people. So joking or not, he needs to really clarify what he's saying, but this seems to be a pattern with him because of the language that he chooses to use. His rallies, his comments have all incited violence in the past. We've seen a senior advisor from him say that Hillary Clinton belongs in a firing line. I mean, there have been statements made by the campaign that just seem to make it seem like a big joke, quite frankly.
Okay, what about it, Katrina? Has the candidate decided that he's going to pivot? I mean, he doesn't strike me as the type of person that wants to pivot or will pivot, but is this the plan?
Well, I believe it was General Bob Scales who said war is not caused by hot air, which is what the never-Trumpers and the media would like for you to believe. And I'll also note that the media, when these previous controversies, many of them made up by the media, they said, well, if the campaign would just respond more quickly and get it out of the way, well, guess what? The campaign responded immediately clarifying those statements because Mr. Trump has always talked about Supreme Court picks and the Second Amendment because Hillary Clinton will pick up and put in horrible Supreme Court justices that will go after the Second Amendment piece by piece. So this was really nothing new, and it was clarified immediately. So the answer is no. Donald Trump is not going to stop talking about the Supreme Court. He's not going to stop talking about the Second Amendment. And look, the media and the never-Trumpers are going to sit there and they're going to wait and they're going to look for something right out of the DNC playbook that WikiLeaks released on page 6, message number 1 for themes: violence. They look for it and they try to promote it,
Katrina,
and it's not going to work.
Katrina, it is very important to note there one important thing you said, that he had to clarify it. He's the tell it like it is candidate, right? Why is it that every time the campaign, including yourself, has to come out there and clarify what he has said?
Hold on,
because the media will push out there any headline that they want. So we absolutely have to clarify because they're not going to determine our message.
Hold on one second. Ashley, Hillary Clinton had to clarify her comment in 2008, the soundbite we played. She had to come back very quickly and say, try and clarify and said what I intended or didn't intend, and then said, and then apologize. But, so for Hillary Clinton to make the comment that Donald Trump shouldn't be using these words, as you point out, she's guilty of the same thing.
Yes, and that doesn't make one okay for the other to do.
But we're down to two choices, Ashley. Those are the only two choices we have left.
And that's fine, Eric, but guess what? I think they're both temperamentally unfit. I think one is reckless. I think one is dangerous, and I think that goes both ways. The things that they say incite things in people that I don't think are great. But look, here's the issue here. The media held her accountable in 2008 and is holding him accountable for things he says. And maybe they'd spend more time focusing on her emails and that whole scandal if he didn't blow up at every single thing and run his mouth, because he is taking the focus
but you're
off
assuming,
of her deliberately
Ashley, you're
because
assuming
he flies
meant,
off the handle.
You're assuming he meant violence. I'm going to give this to Katrina. Go ahead, Katrina. Am I wrong here?
No, you're absolutely right, and that's my point. You know, as I've said earlier today, Donald Trump could sneeze, and CNN would run a headline for 4 days saying that Donald Trump attacked the environment. Then they would bring on a bipartisan EPA reporter saying that, yes, he's trying to take out the world. I mean, this is the kind of nonsense and absurdity that we're dealing with on the Trump campaign from the media with the help of the Never-Trumpers, by the way. We have been talking about espionage, devils, and babies, for crying out loud, when the real
kicked
violence
one out of his rally.
are people that have been supporting these unconstitutional wars, arming the enemies, killing tens of thousands over the last few years, and we're talking about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States?
Because of what he says, Katrina, the media would focus on those serious issues if, in fact, your candidate didn't go out there and say stupid things.
That's what we've seen in this campaign, Ashley.
Ashley, let me ask you this, Ashley. We're going to do a segment later in the show talking about how the media treats both candidates, and Media Research Center tells us that there's 5 times the amount of coverage of Donald Trump's Second Amendment comments than there is about Hillary Clinton's having Sadiq Mateen, the Orlando terrorist father, sitting right behind her. And her campaign really took a long time, if they even ever pushed back on having that guy in the audience.
Now, maybe if his comments weren't as ridiculous as they were and as inflammatory as they were, they would have spent more time or equal time covering it. But the point is, he's the one doing this to himself. He gets off message, and then this is what ends up happening. And look, I, as a Republican, for the last 8 years, have joined in that messaging of blaming the liberal media, because at times it can be hostile towards Republicans. But guess what? When someone needs to be called out for their outrageous rhetoric, it is their job to hold people accountable. So yes, they should be doing the same for Trump and Clinton.
Right.
But he does himself no favors by saying what he does and flying off the handle.
A quick final thought, Katrina, to you.
Well, look, the operative term actually just used is maybe. Maybe if this, then that. And that's simply not the case this election cycle. And it's not just media research centers. Everyone, it's obvious. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, that the media bias that's going on in this campaign.
Well,
and
your
like
candidate has received significant coverage, Katrina, then, and has benefited from it.
All right.
It doesn't matter, Ashley, what Mr. Trump says or does. They will find something to talk about. And as a Republican, you are sitting there helping Hillary Clinton, someone that actually defended
nice spin, Katrina.
hostage
I'd
money
rather
to
help
Iran.
none of them get elected, because they're both dangerous and reckless.
All right, we'll leave it right there.
You're actually helping
That's a good
Hillary
opportunity.
Clinton
Leave
by
it right
being
there.
against Donald Trump.
Katrina and Ashley, great debate. Thank you very much. Directly ahead, new polling shows Donald Trump losing some ground with Republican women, but Monica Crowley says he can still quickly turn things around. She joins us right after this. In the election 2016 segment tonight, Donald Trump's standing with Republican women and on national security, plus a mystery around the death of a Democratic National Committee staffer. First, as you may know, 50 Republicans signed an open letter this week arguing that Trump would put America's security at risk if elected president. Former CIA and NSA Director Michael Hayden is explaining why he is one of the signers.
We felt duty-bound to issue, frankly, a warning that if he governs the way he talks as a candidate, and again, we see no evidence that he won't, he would be quite a danger to an American and global security.
Joining us now to analyze, Fox News contributor Monica Crowley. We'll start on that first one there, Monica. The 50 GOP officials say they can't handle Trump.
Let me start by saying that Democrats never, ever do this. Okay, they always come together to win, or at the very least shut up. Witness Bernie Sanders and his supporters. Republicans constantly indulge in the circular firing squad, and it is disgraceful. That's point number one. Point number two, most of these people are veterans of the George W. Bush administration, so take what they're saying with a grain of salt. They do have an agenda. They are part of the bipartisan ruling class that helped to get the United States into this position of international weakness. Where were they for the last, let's say, 15 years, Eric? They missed 9/11. They kept the borders open. They missed the rise of China. They missed the rise of Putin, or at least failed to deal with him in an aggressive way to stop marching through Crimea and Ukraine and so on. These are things that happened before the advent of Barack Obama. But the responsibility for teeing up the table lies largely with them.
A lot of people
By the
would
way,
say,
where
yeah.
were they for the 4 years when Hillary was Secretary
Well,
of
I
State?
think that's what I was just going to say. A lot of people are saying they're kind of Hillary Clinton Republicans.
Well, they didn't really register concern for the 4 years when she was in there and had responsibility over national security.
Because she voted for all the conflicts and wars we got into. She voted in favor of all those.
Where were they on Benghazi? Where were they on Libya? Where were they on Iraq and Iran and the Russian reset and all of the things that were her portfolio? They didn't raise a lot of issues then. Why? Oh, right now, because they're with her, to coin a phrase.
Is it smart for a general to be weighing in like this on a candidate that may end up he might be president? Now you have on record internationally that a 4-star general says this guy is dangerous.
Right. Well, look, they can say whatever they want, obviously, in America. They're actually teeing up a very powerful argument if Trump can make hay of this, which is that these are card-carrying members of the bipartisan establishment class, the ruling class. Okay, they have been in positions of influence
They've been
for
never
a long
Trumpers
time.
for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
So Donald Trump, if he's smart, can make the argument, look, if you want more of same, go with them. Knock yourself out. Vote for Hillary. Do whatever you want. But if you want real change to bring America back militarily, economically, politically, then I'm your guy, because I can guarantee you that that same group of folks that condemns me in this letter won't have a voice in my administration.
Right. Donald Trump has another argument to make and to win. Republican women. How does he turn it around?
He's got a very difficult time. Look, any Republican presidential candidate was going to face a tough battle with women, because the traditional gender gap has favored Democrats for a very long time, and the Democrats just put up the first female candidate for president. So he was going to have a challenge, but his gender gap has even been bigger. So I think going forward, what he needs to do is tease out his broader message and say, look, all of these issues are women's issues. Strong economic growth, putting Americans back to work, rebuilding our military, defeating Islamic terror.
Jobs.
These are issues that everybody cares about, regardless of your gender. Most women I know don't vote on the basis of their private parts. They vote on the future of the country.
I'll tell you what's important to women. Wages. Wages have been stagnant for 8 years. That this is the area he could say, hey, we're going to figure out a way to get wages up. Not a bad way to do that. Third topic, one of my favorite topics of the day. Julian Assange now says that he may have more leaks, more whistleblowers. Now, there was a staffer who was killed, a DNC staffer who was murdered in D.C. People are trying to make the link between this DNC staffer, Seth Rich, and WikiLeaks. Your thoughts?
Well, we don't know, obviously, what the facts are. I found it curious that Mr. Assange spoke on Dutch television yesterday and alluded to that fact.
Let's listen to it.
Whistleblowers go to significant efforts to get us material, and often very significant risks. There's a 27-year-old works for the DNC who was shot in the back, murdered just 2 weeks ago for unknown reasons as he was walking down the street in Washington.
All right, so let me set it up a little bit. So this guy was walking on the street. He's shot in the back. He's not robbed. He still has his watch, his phone, and his wallet.
Right.
It
Nothing
clearly was not
taken,
a robbery.
nothing
That wasn't
was
a
taken
robbery.
from
They
him.
weren't even trying to get his information.
Right.
This was a hit.
And law enforcement went in, and the original report was that it was a robbery. But now, in view of Mr. Assange comments and some other information, now they're taking a second look at this and saying, not so fast. Maybe, in fact, it wasn't a robbery. Maybe there was something more sinister here. WikiLeaks does work in the shadows, so we don't know for sure. But for Mr. Assange to suggest somehow that this young man, Mr. Rich, was an informant of theirs, I don't see why he would suggest that unless it may in fact be true. The question going forward, I think, for Mrs. Clinton, for everybody here, is what else is out there? Who has it? Whose life may be in danger?
It's like an episode of Homeland.
And yeah, maybe worse in some ways.
So I was talking to my friend Nate, and he said, I told him about the story. Nate says, yeah, DC's dangerous. I said, dangerous? He was shot in the back, and he kept all his money. There's something more here.
Yeah, I mean, look, where there's smoke, there's fire. So, and I think Mr. Rich's parents want a fuller investigation, as they should well be entitled to. The question is, how might this affect the election? Will there be an October surprise? Who is in control of those emails? Who has Mrs. Clinton's email inventory? The Russians, WikiLeaks? No one knows.
Monica, we'll leave it right there. Thank you very much. Hear that, Nate? Where there's smoke, there's fire. Lots of smoke right now. Coming up, how the media played up the Second Amendment, Trump's Second Amendment controversy, and played down the Hillary Clinton rally where the father of the Orlando shooter showed up. The difference will stun you. Don't miss it. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Eric Bolling, in for Bill O'Reilly, and in the personal story segment tonight, the media's coverage of Donald Trump's comments about Hillary Clinton and Second Amendment supporters. According to a study by the Media Research Center, a conservative outfit, the morning and evening network newscast devoted more than 5 times the amount of coverage to the Trump controversy than to the story of the Orlando terrorist's father showing up at a Clinton rally. Joining us now from Reston, Virginia, the Media Research Center's Tim Graham. So it went from 4 times the amount to 5 times the amount. Does that mean the coverage continues to be that skewed, that biased?
Yeah, it's getting worse as we go along. And in particular, CBS is really standing out here because they have 14 minutes on Trump to 1 on Hillary. So they're really skewing the whole thing. But it just shows you a general election pattern that they always have, which is take whatever the gaffe is, like binders full of women, and completely exaggerate it and hyperinflate it. And with the Democrats, it's like, what story?
Yeah. So do you find that it's consistent along all medium? In other words, broadcast medium versus network and versus cable?
Yeah, generally the pattern is the same all the way across. What's really interesting sometimes is when you think that newspapers are going to be more in depth and offer you more on some of these Hillary scandals, and then what you find when you go back and you look at it is, no. You know, for example, the networks totally jumped all over Kaiser Khan's speech to the Democratic convention. The networks ignored Patricia Smith. You look at the newspapers, you find the same thing. The newspaper coverage of the Republican convention barely noticed Patricia Smith and completely exaggerated the Kaiser Khan speech. So this is what you find, whether it's print, whether it's broadcast, whether it's cable news of the liberal persuasion, you're going to get this overwhelming slant that basically always suggests to you this election should be over already. That's the kind of music and lyrics they like to provide in general election season.
So it sounds like this. It's both. It's not only are they highlighting a negative, what they perceive as a negative story for Donald Trump. Yes, so they're blowing that up big, which newscasts tend to do that. But also they're burying what has been perceived by many as a negative story for Hillary Clinton. So that's maybe more egregious.
Well, and clearly these are 2 candidates who are both unpopular. Both of them are perceived as not tremendously honest. I think Hillary's presented as more dishonest, and the networks on the, again, present her as utterly uncontroversial. They like to describe Trump as abnormal and Hillary as normal. Hillary in no way is normal. She is the wife of an impeached, disbarred president, with trainloads of corruption. And they're presenting her as normal in this election. And so many Americans just aren't buying that, and they're not buying the media bias.
But Tim, this isn't new, though. There's been a media bias, this kind of skew going on for a really long time.
Exactly, and this is what we're trying to say to people. Jim Rutenberg had a commentary on the front page of the New York Times on Monday. This is the New York Times line. Donald Trump is so uniquely horrible that we all have to ensure his defeat in the news media. But the funny part was that they pretended this has never been done before. We have never skewed the general election before. This is just what they do, and it's still deplorable.
All right, Tim, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you very much. Straight ahead, a sickening crime in Philadelphia after an illegal immigrant is released by police. Now he's charged with raping a child. The full story next. In the back of the book segment tonight, putting a stop to sanctuary cities. A horrific story out of Philadelphia involving 45-year-old Ramon Aguirre Ochoa, an illegal immigrant from Honduras. He was deported from the U.S. back in 2009, but he came back. And after facing local criminal charges in 2014 over another incident, ICE made a detainer request with Philadelphia officials to take him into custody and deport him yet again. But Philadelphia defied that request after the criminal charges were dropped and let Aguirre Ochoa go free. In a sickening development, he was arrested again late last month accused of raping a 13-year-old or under child. Joining us now with reaction, Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey, who's helped lead the charge against ending sanctuary city policies. Thank you for joining us, Senator. Now, for a long time, you know, Bill O'Reilly has been pushing the Kate Steinle story, pushing the Kate's Law, which I think you were involved with as well. Tell us what is the latest. This is a sanctuary city bill in addition to the Kate's Law legislation.
You know, Eric, you really need both. You really need both because Kate's Law makes all the sense in the world. It says after you've come here repeatedly, illegally, you've been deported, and in addition you've committed violent crimes, then you're going to be subject to a stiff statutory minimum. But the reason you need the sanctuary cities law, right, to end sanctuary cities, is because you need to be able to grab these guys. What happened in Philadelphia, this appalling disaster, this monster raped a child, and he never should have been here. And the folks at ICE didn't want him here. They had asked the police department of Philadelphia to hold this guy until they could send an agent to pick him up and deport him. The city of the police department, their hands were tied by a very bad policy that forbids them from cooperating with federal immigration officials. It's terrible, and it's a security risk for all of us.
I think that's an important distinction to highlight, the fact that the local police, the law enforcement agencies want to turn these bad guys over to ICE, but they're told not to because of the politics.
Absolutely, Eric. I don't know a single police officer who supports these sanctuary city policies. They know these guys are bad guys. Look, remember, this is the Obama administration. They're not actually in the business of like wholesale deportation of illegal immigrants. The only ones they want to deport are people who are committing these violent crimes or suspected of committing violent crimes or being terrorists. And when a city like Philadelphia refuses to cooperate even in those circumstances, then we get exactly this kind of situation. And by the way, this monster who's apparently raped a child, this could happen again if he makes bail, or if for some reason the case against him falls apart and they have to release him. According to the current policy in Philadelphia, they will not inform ICE. They will just release this guy onto the streets of Philadelphia. This is terrible.
Yeah.
We've got to end this.
You mentioned something right there that I didn't even think of and didn't realize. Now, is there a distinction for terror as well? If these guys are suspected of terror, at that point, can they be turned over to the feds?
Eric, under the policies in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is not alone, but it does have one of the most extreme versions of this, even if the ICE officials suspect the illegal immigrant who's in detention, they suspect him of being a member of a terrorist organization, the city still won't cooperate.
How is that possible, Senator? How is it possible that a local, it's got to be a lawmaker, will tell the cops, look the other way, we may have a terrorist in our cell right here, and we're not going to turn him over to ICE, we're just going to let him free on our streets?
It's unbelievable, but that is the city government's policy. It's by executive order of the mayor. The previous mayor, by the way, there's bipartisan opposition to this. The previous mayor, Michael Nutter, rescinded this policy, put an end to it. The new mayor then restated it. The former mayor and governor, Ed Rendell, opposes this policy. The Obama administration even opposes it. But there are communities across America, and sadly including Philadelphia, that nevertheless refuse to cooperate.
Senator, this doesn't, your legislation doesn't get through the Senate. Why? We got to go. I don't have a lot of time. Just tell me, where's the holdup? How many more do you need? How many more signatures do you need?
We've had a vote. The problem is we don't have Democrat support for it. I held all but one Republican on my bill to end sanctuary cities, and we picked up only 2 Democrats. We need 60. The Democrats filibustered it, and so we weren't able to pass this.
So you're about 5 short or so.
It's just appalling.
Senator, we're going to leave it right there. Senator, very, very important story. Thank you very much. That's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly, and please remember, the spin stops here because we're looking out for you.